Good morning and welcome to our last week of Get on the Bus Readers Advisory. I'm Sarah here at the State Library, and today we have Mary Gilgannon, who is from the Laramie County Library, who is going to be talking about romance for her first presentation and mystery for her second. And as some of you may know, Mary is a romance author in her own right. Just a few reminders as we wrap up our program this week. All of the videos will be archived at getonthebuswyoming.wordpress.com. And each of the presentations, I'll click on one of the ones from last week, will have some other information, any links that are applicable to the presentation that may be something the presenter mentioned or just thought would be helpful for you to review at a later time. And each of the presentations have these homework questions for those of you interested in putting yourself in the running for some prizes, or for those of you school teacher librarians or school media specialists, the program has been approved for 1.5 CEUs, and you will need to participate in the homework questions to take advantage of those credits. Any questions on prizes or CEUs or anything like that, you can email me at sarah.francis@wyo.gov. I'll go ahead and keep this brief because I know I tend to ramble at the beginning of these presentations. I am actually going to be heading out for a conference for the rest of the week, so helping Mary with the rest of her presentation will be Jamie Marcus, and he will be helping out the folks with Thursday's presentation on Wyoming authors. But please feel free to email me if there's any questions or concerns on the program. And with that, we'll go ahead and pass it off to Mary.
Okay, romance is a very popular genre. According to Romance Writers of America, romances account for over 13% of the total book market, which eclipses all other fiction genres. So there are a lot of romance readers out there, but it is one of the most varied and encompassing a huge range of settings and styles and all kinds of books. But all romances, to start off with, have one thing in common. They end with a happily ever after. Books that don't fit this criterion may be love stories or have strong romantic elements. But if the hero and heroine aren't together at the end, envisioning a long-term life together, then most romance readers will say it's not a romance. Also, most romances are courtship books, which means they tell the story of how the couple falls in love and commits to each other rather than dealing with the rest of their lives. A lot of romance readers know a great deal about the genre and what they like. In fact, they frequently will request authors I haven't heard about and suggest that I get them. And I really do try to follow the genre. So there's a lot of savvy readers. But you'll also find readers who've just discovered romance or who want to know more about read-alikes for their favorite authors. And then there's the patrons who are trying to pick out books for someone else, and all they know is that the person likes romance. When you're doing reader's advisory for romance, there are a couple of things you might want to find out from the patron. One is the level of sensuality they are comfortable with. And this is basically a euphemistic term for how much physical intimacy there is between the hero and heroine and how important this part of the relationship is to the story. Physical intimacy can vary from a chaste kiss in an inspirational romance to multiple sex scenes with lots of variety and graphic description in erotic romance. Readers can have strong preferences in this regard, and it's important to find out what they're looking for. In general, I found that readers who dislike a lot of sex will warn you. They'll say something like they don't like smut or porn or something like that. But if they don't volunteer that sort of information, you can either tactfully ask if they like racy or spicy books, or take your cues from the authors they currently read. Since most of the best-selling romance authors outside of inspirational romance write fairly sexy books, the majority of readers are going to be okay with all but the really explicit stuff, which is generally labeled as erotic romance or erotic or something like that. If the patron prefers fairly chaste or sweet books, you're always safe to stay with inspirational romance. Some of the popular authors in the subgenre are Robin Lee Hatcher, Karen Kingsbury, Beverly Lewis, Tracy Peterson, as well as Cheyenne author Amanda Cabot, whose third book in her series has come out, and she's got another series she's working on that's set in Wyoming, so that'll look forward to that. Most readers aren't going to find anything offensive in inspirational books. On the other end of the sensuality scale are authors like Laura Lee, Susan Johnson, Lucy Monroe, and Kate Douglas. Some patrons would be very offended by their books, but other patrons are going to love them. They do get pretty graphic. The second thing I think is extremely important as an appeal factor in romance is the setting. Some readers really like contemporary stories, while others like historical ones, and still others favor the imaginary world of paranormals. Romances set in the contemporary world have been popular for years. The original short paperback Harlequin and Silhouette stories that we're all familiar with, they were sometimes called category romance. They were all set in contemporary times. In these books, certain settings are currently popular. For example, Susan Brockway has been very successful with a romance series where the heroes are Navy SEALs. Linda Lale Miller, Diane Palmer, and Cheyenne's own Joanne Kennedy have become reader favorites with their cowboy romances. Debbie Maycomber has written dozens of romance set in small towns in western states, so the kind of small town setting is very popular right now. In historical romance, there is a wide range of settings. Currently, the Regency area is very, very popular, which I kind of think is an offshoot of the Jane Austen craze. And some popular Regency authors are Lisa Kleypas, Mary Baylow, Stephanie Lauren, Julia Quinn, Amanda Quick, and Eloisa James. These books tend to be fairly hot and also sophisticated and witty. Another setting that is particularly popular right now is the Scottish medieval. The appeal for this era pretty much boils down to nothing like a hot guy in a kilt. Some Scottish medieval authors you might recommend are Hannah Howell, Julia London, Monica McCarthy, and Mary Wine. And in this part of the country, Western historical and cowboy heroes never really go out of style, although they're sometimes hard to find. It's a little better lately. There's been a few more. Lee Greenwood writes Western historical romances, as do Linda Lale Miller, Linda Howard, Joan Johnson, and Georgina Gentry. There are also futuristic, sci-fi, and time travel romances, which are set in the worlds of those genres. Some popular time travel authors are Karen Marie Moning, Janet Chapman, and Sandra Hill. Other romances have a strong mystery or some suspense element and are sometimes referred to as romantic suspense. A lot of mainstream suspense writers got their start writing romance, including Sandra Brown, Iris Johansen, Julie Garwood, Linda Howard, and Tess Gerritsen. Authors who write books that are a little more focused on the romance in addition to the suspense are Anne Stewart, Beverly Barton, and Brenda Joyce. In addition to pure romances in the sense of clearly fitting the genre, there are a lot of books that may have a strong romance and even a happily ever after ending, but there's a lot more going on in them besides a relationship between a man and a woman. Some of these books might be characterized as women's fiction and some as chick lit. What they have in common with romance is that they are focused on relationships, not necessarily just romantic ones, but also relationships between female friends, already married couples, who may or may still not be in love, mothers and daughters, and other female relatives. A lot of romance readers read widely in other genres, particularly women's fiction, and they're pretty open to different kinds of stories. They also read mystery and fantasy and all kinds of things. They're really pretty open-minded in general. But one thing I found is that they want to know what to expect in a book, and their expectations really do matter to how much they enjoy it. For example, if they're reading a suspense thriller, they don't get upset if the hero and heroine aren't together at the end of the book. But if they think they're reading a romance and they have that expectation, they may be disappointed if it doesn't happen. One challenge in doing reader's advisory for romance is that a lot of these authors are only available in mass market paperback, and Novelist unfortunately doesn't include books like that. So you have to use other sources for getting reader's advisory ideas. Two review sites I like are likesbooks.com and theromancereader.com. Reading through the reviews on these sites will give you an idea of what real readers are looking for in romance. They're pretty picky. They're probably pickier than some of the professional reviewers. There's also the Romantic Times website, which has reviews for hundreds of romances, but they're pretty short and not always very meaningful, although they do have a rating system that can sometimes help. Plus, they won't let you read their current reviews without a subscription. Unfortunately, none of these sites feature reader likes or give complete series, and a lot of romances are series. For series listings of all genres, I like the website Fantastic Fiction out of the UK. It lists hundreds of authors, old and new, and the series lists print out really nicely that you can give them to patrons when they want an author's series. And that pretty much concludes my presentation, and I guess we'll open it up now for questions.